The morning sun streamed through the large kitchen window, catching dust motes dancing in the air. It was a beautiful, expensive kitchen, with shiny countertops and every appliance you could imagine. But for the woman standing in it, it often felt like the quietest and loneliest room in the house. Her name was Anya, and she was preparing a cup of tea, her movements slow and thoughtful. In the other room, she could hear her husband, Rowan, talking loudly on his phone. His voice was confident, booming. He was discussing a big property deal, and from his tone, it was going very well. Anya allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. Maybe a good business day would mean a good mood for the rest of the evening. Maybe they could finally talk, properly, without the heavy, unspoken thing that always sat between them. They had been married for 10 years. In the beginning, everything was filled with laughter and big dreams. They were a team. He was a man with big ambitions, starting his own real estate company. She was an artist, her hands skilled at creating beautiful designs on a computer screen. They bought this house, a symbol of their future together. They painted the walls together, argued lightheartedly about furniture, and lay in the garden at night, pointing out stars and talking about the family they would one day have. But years passed, and the nursery room they had lovingly set aside remained empty. The quiet of the house, once peaceful, began to feel heavy. The conversations about children, once full of excitement, became shorter, then stopped completely. It was the elephant in the room, a giant, sad creature that nobody mentioned but everyone could feel. Rowan started to change. The man who used to bring her flowers for no reason started coming home later and later. His focus was entirely on his work, on building his empire. Anya understood. She threw herself into her own design work, building a quiet but successful career from her home office. But she felt him pulling away. The distance between them grew from a small crack into a deep valley. That evening, they were invited to a party at a friend's house. As Anya got ready, she felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach. These social gatherings had become a special kind of torture for her. The party was in a big, noisy house full of people, and as it always seemed to happen these days, it was full of children. Laughing children running through the halls, babies crying in their mother's arms. Anya found a quiet corner near the food table, trying to look busy with a plate of snacks. She saw Rowan across the room. He was surrounded by his friends from the business world, holding a glass and laughing. He looked happy, in his element. Anya's heart ached for that version of him, the one he never seemed to be at home anymore. Then, it happened. One of the men in the group, a man named Vikram who had a young son on his hip, clapped Rowan on the back and said something Anya couldn't hear. But she saw Rowan's response clearly. He shrugged, a bitter, tight smile on his face. He gestured vaguely in her direction with his glass and said, loud enough for people nearby to hear, "What can I do? My wife's oven is broken. Can't bake the bun." A few people around him laughed awkwardly. Others looked down, uncomfortable. For Anya, the noise of the party suddenly faded into a dull roar. Her face felt hot, and the room seemed to spin. The crude, cruel words felt like a physical slap. He had reduced their shared pain, her deepest sadness, into a cheap, ugly joke for his friends. She stood there, frozen, her plate feeling heavy in her hand. She wanted the ground to swallow her whole. She caught the eye of another woman across the room, who gave her a look of pure pity. That was almost worse than the joke itself. Pity. Rowan, completely unaware of the devastation he had caused, continued laughing with his group. The car ride home was a silence so thick you could almost touch it. Anya stared out of the window at the passing street lights. Tears she refused to let fall burning in her eyes. Rowan drove, humming a tune from the party, seemingly without a care in the world. When they walked into their silent house, Anya finally found her voice. It was a whisper, cracked with pain. "How could you say that?" Rowan tossed his keys into a ceramic bowl by the door. The clatter was loud in the quiet hall. "Say what?" "At the party," she said, her voice growing stronger. "What you said to Vikram. About me. Comparing me to a broken appliance." Rowan sighed, a long, suffering sound, as if she was bothering him with something trivial. "Oh, relax, Anya. It was just a joke." "Can't you take a joke?" Everyone was laughing. "That wasn't a joke, Rowan," she said, her hands trembling. "That was humiliating. You humiliated me in front of all our friends. Our struggle to have a child is not a punchline for your friends. Our struggle." Rowan turned to face her, and his eyes were cold. "Is it our struggle, Anya? Or is it your problem? I am perfectly fine. I am healthy. Maybe if you weren't so stressed all the time, always working in your little office, things would be different." His words were like knives. For years, she had shouldered the blame silently, a secret fear eating away at her. And now, he was saying it out loud. He was confirming her worst nightmare, that he truly believed it was all her fault, maybe. she began, her voice shaking. Maybe we should both go to a doctor. Together. There's a specialist everyone is talking about. Dr. Mehta. We could get a proper checkup for both of us. We could understand what's happening. Rowan's face hardened. No. Absolutely not. I am not going to some doctor to be poked and prodded because you can't get pregnant. There is nothing wrong with me. I will not be embarrassed like that. Embarrassed? Anya felt a surge of anger. What about my embarrassment tonight? What about my pain? For 10 years, I have wanted this just as much as you. But you're not in this with me, Rowan. You're just pointing fingers, because it's obvious where the problem is. He shouted, his voice echoing in the high ceiling of their living room. All my friends have wives who have given them children, families, a legacy. What do I have? A big, empty house and a wife who can't give me a son. The word legacy hung in the air. It was always about a legacy for him. A son to carry on his name, to inherit his business. Anya had wanted a child for the laughter, the love, the messy, beautiful chaos of a family. She realized, in that crushing moment, that they had wanted to completely different things all along. Tears finally streamed down her face, hot and fast. So that's all I am to you? An instrument for your legacy. And now, a broken one. Rowan looked at her crying, and his expression didn't soften. It just grew more tired, more distant. I'm done with this conversation, Anya. I'm done with this entire situation. I can't live my life like this anymore. Always waiting, always hoping for something that is never going to happen. He turned and walked away, heading towards their bedroom, but the chasm between them felt wider than ever. Anya stood alone in the living room, in the beautiful, silent, empty house they had built together. The man she loved, the man she had built her life around, saw her as a failure, a broken thing, and he was done. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling a coldness that had nothing to do with the night air. The hope she had been clinging to for so long, the tiny flame she kept alive, flickered and went out. She was alone, truly, utterly alone in her marriage. And she knew, with a sickening certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The foundation of their life together had just cracked beyond repair. Asterisk, the silence in the house after that night was different. Before, the quiet had been a space waiting to be filled. Now, it was a heavy, final thing, like a thick blanket smothering everything. Anya and Rowan moved around each other like ghosts in their own home. They didn't argue anymore. There was no more shouting. The fight had gone out of both of them, leaving behind only a cold, weary acceptance. Rowan spent even more time at his office. When he was home, he was usually on the phone or locked in his study. He had built a wall around himself, and Anya didn't have the strength to try and break it down. She felt fragile, like a single wrong word or look would shatter her into 1,000 pieces. She tried to go back to her normal routine. She sat at her computer in her home office, trying to focus on her design work. But the colors on the screen seemed dull, and her creativity had dried up. How could she create something beautiful when her own life felt so broken? She would often just sit there, staring out the window, her mind a whirlpool of sad thoughts. A few weeks after the party, on a Tuesday morning, Rowan did not leave for work at his usual time. Anya was in the kitchen, washing her teacup when he walked in. He was dressed in a sharp, formal suit, but his face was serious. He wasn't holding his briefcase. Instead, he was holding a thin, official-looking envelope. He placed it on the kitchen counter between them. The sound of the paper hitting the granite countertop was soft, but to Anya, it sounded like a thunderclap. "What is this?" she asked, though a sick feeling in her stomach already told her. "Just read it," he said, his voice flat and without emotion. He didn't look her in the eye. He just stood there waiting. With trembling hands, Anya picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, like it was made of lead. She pulled out the papers. The words at the top were bold and cruel. Petition for divorce. Her vision blurred. The words swam on the page. She saw phrases like irreconcilable differences and the marriage is irretrievably broken. It was all such cold, legal language for something that was once built on love and promises. She looked up at him, her eyes pleading, searching for any sign of the man she married. "Rowan, is this really what you want? After everything, after 10 years. He finally met her gaze, and his eyes were like stone. "There's nothing left here, Anya. You know it. I know it. I can't live in this sadness anymore. I want a family. I want a future. And you can't give that to me." Each word was a nail in the coffin of their marriage. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just done. And that was so much worse. "I asked you to see a doctor with me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We could have tried. Together." "It's too late for that," he said, shaking his head. "I've already wasted enough time. I'm not getting any younger. Sign the papers, Anya." Let's make this clean. I'll be fair with the money. You can keep the house. I don't want it. Keep the house, she thought. This empty, echoing building that was supposed to be filled with the sounds of a family. It felt like a prison sentence, not a gift. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and pain. Anya felt like she was watching a movie of someone else's terrible life. She contacted a lawyer, a kind but firm woman who explained the process. Rowan, true to his word, was not fighting her over their possessions. He wanted only one thing, his freedom. The actual divorce proceeding was quick and quiet. There was no dramatic courtroom scene. It was done in a lawyer's office with wood-paneled walls and a large, imposing desk. Anya signed her name on the dotted lines, her hand shaking so badly the signature looked like a child's scribble. Rowan signed his with a quick, confident flourish. He didn't look at her once. And just like that, 10 years of marriage were over. The law declared them to separate people again. Rowan moved out that same afternoon. He had already packed his things. He took his clothes, his important papers, and a few personal items. He left behind all the furniture, the photos, the memories. It was as if he was erasing himself from her life as quickly and completely as possible. Anya stood in the doorway of her bedroom and watched his car pull out of the driveway. For the last time, she expected to feel a massive wave of grief, to collapse on the floor and cry until there were no tears left. But she didn't. She felt nothing, a deep, hollow emptiness. It was as if all her emotions, the love, the hurt, the anger, the sadness had been used up, and there was nothing left inside her but a quiet, dark space. The weeks turned into a month. Anya lived her life on autopilot. She woke up, she tried to work, she ate meals without tasting the food, and she went to bed, only to lie awake for hours staring at the ceiling. The house was so quiet. She started leaving the television on just to hear another human voice. She also started feeling very strange, more tired than usual, which she put down to the stress and heartbreak. And her body felt different. She couldn't quite explain it. One morning, the smell of the coffee she was brewing, which she usually loved, made her feel so sick she had to run to the bathroom. She dismissed it at first. Stress, she told herself. It's just your body reacting to the shock. But the feeling didn't go away. The fatigue got worse. The nausea came and went at odd times. A tiny, impossible thought began to whisper at the very back of her mind. It was a thought so wild, so hopeful, that she was afraid to even acknowledge it. It couldn't be. The timing was all wrong. And after all these years of hoping and being disappointed, her heart couldn't take another letdown. Finally, after a particularly bad wave of dizziness while she was grocery shopping, she knew she had to find out. She drove to the local pharmacy, her heart pounding in her chest. She walked down the aisle she had walked down so many times before with a sinking heart, only to leave empty-handed. She picked up a small, rectangular box, her hands trembling. She bought it, hiding it in the bottom of her bag like a secret, back in the silent, empty house. She followed the instructions on the box. She waited for the result, sitting on the edge of the bathtub, her eyes closed, not daring to look. She prayed, not for a positive, not for a negative, but just for the strength to handle whatever the answer was. The timer on her phone beeped. She took a deep, shaky breath and opened her eyes. She looked down at the small plastic stick, and the world, which had been so gray and silent for so long, suddenly exploded back into color and sound. There, in the little window, was a result she had stopped believing she would ever see. A result that was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life, but instead of joy, a storm of emotions crashed over her. There was shock, so powerful it made her legs give way, and she slid to the cold bathroom floor. There was a flicker of that pure, incredible joy, but it was quickly swallowed by a tidal wave of fear, and then a fierce, burning anger. She was pregnant. The one thing he had ridiculed her for, divorced her for, was now growing inside her. The man who had called her a failure had, in their last weeks together, given her the greatest gift possible, and he had thrown her away before he could even know. She sat on the floor for a long time, crying tears that were a confusing mix of happiness and the deepest sorrow. She was going to be a mother, but she was going to be a mother completely alone, as just the world had tilted on its axis. Anya sat on the cold bathroom floor, her back against the wall for what felt like hours. The little plastic stick rested on the tiles beside her, a tiny object that had changed everything. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind, a word she had longed for, prayed for, and eventually given up on. A slow, trembling smile touched her lips, but it was quickly followed by a fresh wave of tears. This was supposed to be the happiest news of her life. She was supposed to run to her husband to see his face light up with joy, to be swept up in a hug that promised a future together. But her husband was gone. He had divorced her for this very reason. The cruel irony of it was a heavy weight on her chest. She pulled her knees up to her chin, wrapping her arms around them. What was she going to do? Her first instinct, a fierce and powerful one, was to protect this new life inside her. This was her baby, hers, a part of her that no one could ridicule or take away. But then, a practical fear set in. She was alone. She lived in this big, empty house in a city that now felt full of painful memories. Every corner of this place reminded her of Rowan, of their failed marriage, of the hurtful words he had said. How could she raise a child here, in this museum of her sadness? And what about him? Did he have a right to know? The question made her blood run cold for a moment. He had signed away his rights. He had made it brutally clear that he wanted no part of a life with her. He had called her a failure. The anger that rose in her now was different from the sad, defeated hurt she had felt before. This was a sharp, clean, protective anger. A mother's anger. No, she whispered into the silent bathroom. The word fell firm. He doesn't get to know. He lost that right. But she couldn't do this alone. She needed someone. Her thoughts turned to her older sister, Priya. Priya lived in a smaller, quieter city a few hours away. She was warm, practical, and had always been Anya's biggest supporter. She had 2 young children of her own and had been a rock for Anya during the darkest days of the divorce, even though she had never approved of Rowan's behavior. With shaky hands, Anya picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed her sister's number. Anya? Hey, is everything okay? Priya's voice was always a comfort, like a warm blanket. Anya tried to speak, but a sob caught in her throat. Priya was all she could manage. Anya? What's wrong? Talk to me. Priya's voice was instantly alert, filled with concern. I took a test. Anya stammered, the tears flowing freely now. There was a pause on the other end. Priya knew exactly what kind of test she meant. She had been with Anya through countless disappointments. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. It's okay. It's going to be okay? No, Anya said, her voice strengthening. No, it's positive. The silence from Priya's end was absolute. Then, a sharp intake of breath. What, Anya? Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Oh my God. Priya's voice was a mixture of pure shock and dawning joy. Anya, that's incredible. That's a miracle. Then her tone shifted, remembering the reality. But Rowan, does he? He doesn't know, Anya said firmly. And he is not going to know. He divorced me, Priya. He threw me away like I was nothing. He told me I was a failure. This is my baby, not his. Priya was quiet for a moment, processing. Okay, she said finally, her voice calm and decisive. Okay, listen to me. You are not alone. You pack a bag. You get in your car, and you come to my house. Right now. You shouldn't be in that big, empty house by yourself. Come here. We will figure this out together. The relief that washed over Anya was so powerful it made her dizzy. She wasn't alone. She had a lifeline. That same day, Anya packed her suitcases. She didn't take much, just her clothes, her laptop for work, and a few personal treasures. She left behind almost everything that reminded her of her old life. She took one last look around the beautiful, silent house, then walked out the door, not with sadness, but with a determined sense of moving forward. Driving to her sister's city felt like driving towards a new beginning. The further she got from her old home, the lighter she began to feel. The constant knot of anxiety in her stomach started to loosen when she arrived at Priya's house. It was the opposite of her own, noisy, messy, and full of life. Children's toys were scattered in the garden, and the sound of cartoons came from the living room. Priya ran out the front door and wrapped Anya in a tight, warm hug, not letting go for a long time. You're here now, Priya whispered. You're safe? We've got you. Over the next few days, nestled in the comforting chaos of her sister's home, Anya started to make a plan. Priya took her to a highly recommended doctor in the city for her first official appointment. Anya was nervous, lying on the examination table, while the doctor moved a small device over her stomach for an ultrasound. The doctor was quiet, staring intently at the screen. Anya's heart hammered against her ribs. Was something wrong? After everything, had she gotten her hopes up for nothing? Then the doctor smiled, a slow, amazed smile. Well, Anya, she said, her voice gentle. No wonder you've been feeling so tired. It looks like you've hit the jackpot. Anya blinked. What do you mean? I mean, the doctor said, turning the screen so Anya could see. There's not just one heartbeat in there. She moved the device slightly. There are 4. Anya stared at the grainy, black and white screen. She saw multiple little shapes, little flickering lights, for hearts beating, for lives growing inside her. Quadruplets, the doctor said softly. You're expecting quadruplets. The world stopped. All the air left Anya's lungs. Quadruplets for babies. The shock was so immense she couldn't even form a thought. She looked from the screen to the doctor's face and back again. One baby had felt like a miracle. Felt like an earthquake. A beautiful, terrifying, life-changing earthquake. She walked out of the clinic in a complete daze, clutching the ultrasound printout in her hand. Priya was waiting in the waiting room. Anya simply handed her the paper. Priya looked at it, her eyes widening in disbelief. She looked at her sister, then back at the paper. 4, she whispered, her voice full of awe. Anya, there are 4? Anya just nodded, still unable to speak. For a moment, they just stood there in the middle of the busy clinic, the sisters surrounded by the impossible. Then Priya started to laugh, a laugh of pure, unadulterated joy and shock. She pulled Anya into another crushing hug. Oh, my wonderful, strong sister, Priya said, her own eyes wet with tears. You went from having no one to having a whole football team. The fear was still there, a huge and real fear about how she would manage. But as she stood there, hugged by her sister, feeling the first flutters of new life inside her for times over, the fear was mixed with something else, something powerful and unbreakable. It was a fierce, determined love. She was no longer the woman who was ridiculed for being childless. She was a mother. She was a warrior. And she would move heaven and earth for her for miracles. The news of quadruplets did not feel real at first. It felt like a dream, a story happening to someone else. But her body soon made it very real. The tiredness she had felt before was nothing compared to the deep, bone-aching fatigue that settled over her now. Her mornings began with a rush to the bathroom, sick to her stomach. The smell of certain foods, even ones she used to love, could make her feel dizzy. But with every new ache and every wave of sickness, a strange thing happened. Anya felt her spirit growing stronger. This was no longer just a pregnancy. It was a mission she had for tiny lives depending on her, and she would not let them down. Her sister's home became her command center. Priya was her general, her nurse, and her biggest cheerleader. She made sure Anya ate the right foods, even when she didn't feel like eating. She took care of her own children, while also taking care of her sister, her love a constant, steady presence. Anya knew she could not stay in her sister's small house forever, especially with 4 newborns on the way. With Priya's help, she found a small, cozy apartment nearby. Using the money from the divorce settlement, she bought simple, sturdy furniture. There were no fancy decorations, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, it was hers. It was a blank canvas for their new life, a life that held no memories of the past. Her days fell into a new rhythm. Doctor's appointments became her most important events. She would lie on the examination table, her heart swelling with a mixture of fear and awe as she listened to the rapid, galloping sound of 4 separate heartbeats on the monitor. The doctor called them Baby A, Baby B, Baby C, and Baby D, but in her heart, Anya had already started to think of them as her little team, her warriors. She spent her afternoons resting, her growing body needing more and more energy. She would feel them move inside her, not gentle flutters, but rolls and kicks that felt like a little party was happening in her belly. Sometimes she would just sit with her hands on her stomach, talking to them in a soft voice. It's just you and me, my little ones, she would whisper. But we are strong. We are enough. Your mama loves you more than anything in this world. She had made her decision final and firm. Rowan would not know. She had closed that chapter of her life. This was her story now, and her children's story. She changed her phone number and made all her social media accounts private. She became a ghost in his world, by her own choice. Meanwhile, in another city, Rowan was living a very different life. He had gotten what he wanted, his freedom. He was dating a woman he had met through his business, a woman who was glamorous and carefree. They went to expensive restaurants and attended fancy parties. But a strange emptiness had begun to follow him. The big, new apartment he had rented felt even emptier than the house he had left behind. The success of his business deals started to feel hollow. There was no one to share it with, no one who truly cared. The woman he was dating talked about traveling the world, but never about building a home or a family. He started to have dreams. Dreams of Anya's face, not angry or sad, but just as she was when they were first married, smiling and full of hope. He would wake up with a sharp feeling of regret in his chest. He tried to push it away, telling himself he had made the right choice, but the feeling wouldn't leave. One afternoon, he ran into an old mutual friend at a coffee shop. The friend asked, awkwardly, if he had heard from Anya. No, Rowan said, trying to sound casual. Why would I? It's just, she's completely vanished, the friend said. No one has seen her. She closed her old design business profile. It's like she just disappeared. A cold trickle of unease went down Rowan's spine. Where could she have gone? She had no family in the city except for him. Then he remembered her sister, Priya, who lived a few hours away. He felt a sudden, urgent need to know if she was okay. It wasn't about wanting her back, he told himself. It was just curiosity. Just to tie up a loose end, he found Priya's profile online. It was set to private, but her profile picture was visible. It was a recent photo. She was standing in a garden, smiling. And standing right next to her, with one arm around her sister, was Anya. Rowan's breath caught in his throat. Anya looked different. She was facing away from the camera slightly, but he could see the curve of her cheek. And she was glowing. She looked happier and more at peace than he had seen her in years. But that wasn't what made his heart stop. She was undeniably, unmistakably pregnant. Very, very pregnant. He stared at the screen. His coffee forgotten, the noise of the coffee shop fading into a dull buzz. Pregnant. Anya was pregnant. His mind raced. Doing the math, counting the months since their divorce. It was possible. Just barely, but it was possible. The baby could be his. A storm of emotions crashed over him. Shock first, so powerful it made him feel lightheaded. Then a wild, unbelievable surge of hope. A child. He could have a child. The one thing he wanted most in the world. But right on the heels of that hope came a shame so deep and so painful it felt like a physical blow. He remembered the party where he had ridiculed her. He remembered the divorce papers. He remembered his cold, final words. You can't give me a future. And all this time, she had been carrying his child. He had to talk to her. He had to know. He tried her old number, but it was disconnected. He sent her an email. It bounced back. He was locked out, completely shut out of her life. He spent the next few days in a restless agony. The image of Anya, pregnant and happy without him, was burned into his mind. He had been so blind, so arrogant. He had thrown away his entire future for his pride. The legacy he was so desperate for had been within his grasp, and he had tossed it aside. He realized with a painful clarity that he didn't just want the child. He wanted her. He wanted her strength, her kindness, the life they had built together. He had been chasing an idea of a family while destroying the real one he already had. He was living in a beautiful, spacious prison of his own making. And she, the woman he had called a failure, was out there, building a new world without him, carrying the proof of his greatest mistake and his greatest loss. 2 years can feel like a lifetime. For Anya, those 2 years were a blur of sleepless nights, messy days, and a love so big it sometimes took her breath away. Her small apartment was no longer quiet. It was filled with the joyful, chaotic sounds of her children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Her QUADRUPLETS. They were not just a number. Each one had their own little personality already. The first boy was serious and observant. The second was a little adventurer, always trying to climb everything. The first girl had a gurgling laugh that could light up the whole room. The second girl was calm and content, with big, thoughtful eyes. It was hard. There were days when Anya was so tired she would cry along with them. There were mountains of laundry and a constant cycle of feeding and bathing. But she was not alone. Her sister, Priya, was there almost every day, her own children playing with their cousins. They had created their own little village, a community of love and support. Anya had also started her own small design business from home, creating beautiful artwork for children's books. It didn't make her rich, but it gave her freedom and a sense of purpose. She was a mother and an artist. She was complete. One day, a big children's charity in the city was holding a fancy fundraising gala. A client of Enya's, who loved her work and knew her story, had donated a large sum of money in the name of Enya's design business. The organizers, as a thank you, sent her a formal invitation. At first, Anya wanted to refuse. A gala, with ball gowns and speeches, that was part of her old life. But Priya insisted. You deserve a night out. You work so hard. I'll watch the kids. You need to put on a pretty dress, and remember you're not just a mom. You're a successful businesswoman too. After much persuasion, Anya agreed. She bought a simple, but elegant dark blue dress. It felt strange to be dressed up, to be in heels again. As she walked into the Grand Hotel ballroom, with its sparkling chandeliers and the sound of a live band, she felt a flicker of her old anxiety. She saw groups of people talking and laughing, and for a moment, she felt like the lonely woman at the party all those years ago. But then she straightened her shoulders. She was not that woman anymore. She found her table, introduced herself to the people sitting there, and smiled. She was here for her work, for her children's future. She felt a quiet confidence she had never known before. At that very same moment, across the crowded room, another story was unfolding. Rowan was also at the gala. His business had bought a table to support the charity. He was wearing an expensive suit, a glass of champagne in his hand. The woman he had been dating was beside him, but his mind was elsewhere. The last 2 years had been empty. The relationship had fizzled out. The success of his business felt meaningless. The image of Anya, pregnant, was a ghost that haunted him every single day. He had tried everything to find her, but she had vanished completely. He was listening to his date talk, but he wasn't really hearing her. His eyes scanned the room absently, and then they stopped. His heart slammed against his ribs. It was her. Anya. She was standing near the entrance to the dance floor, talking with a group of people. She looked radiant. Her face was fuller, her skin glowed. She was smiling, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. She looked strong, happy, and utterly at peace. She was more beautiful than he had ever remembered. He couldn't breathe. He just stared, his world narrowing to just her. And then he saw it. Next to her, a woman he recognized as her sister, Priya, was not alone. She was holding the hand of a toddler, and then another toddler, an identical little boy, came waddling up to Anya, clutching her leg. Anya leaned down and scooped him up effortlessly, settling him on her hip without breaking her conversation. One child, Rowan thought, his mind reeling. She had one child, but then his eyes, wide with shock, saw more. Another woman from their table came over, holding the hands of 2 more little girls. 2 little girls who looked exactly like the 2 little boys. For children. For toddlers. All the same size, all with the same dark, curious eyes. 2 boys, 2 girls. The truth hit him with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just a baby. It was quadruplets. He had ridiculed her, divorced her, and thrown her out for being unable to have a child. And she had been pregnant, not with 1, but with 4 of his children. The champagne glass almost slipped from his numb fingers. The noise of the gala, the music, the laughter had all faded into a distant roar. He saw the happy chaos around Anya. He saw the love in her eyes as she looked at the little boy in her arms. He saw the complete, beautiful family he had destroyed. His date, noticing his pale face and fixed stare, followed his gaze. She saw the 4 children. She saw the way Rowan was looking at Anya, a look of utter devastation on his face. She understood everything in an instant. She leaned close to him, her voice cold. "So that's her," she whispered. "The one you said couldn't give you a family." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "It looks like she's doing just fine without you." With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving him completely alone. Rowan didn't even notice her leave. He was paralyzed, watching the life he should have had. He saw Anya laugh at something her sister said, her whole face lighting up. He saw the 4 beautiful children, his children, who had no idea who he was. He had spent years chasing a legacy, a name to carry on. And here it was, in the form of 4 perfect little humans, and he was a stranger to them. He had everything he thought he wanted, and he had lost it all because of his own pride and cruelty. Anya, feeling a strange prickling on the back of her neck, turned her head. Her eyes met his across the room for a single, frozen second. Their worlds collided. He saw no anger in her eyes, no hatred. He saw something much worse, calm recognition, and then a quiet, final dismissal. She looked at him as if he were a stranger, a piece of the past that had no power over her present. She turned back to her sister and her children, shutting him out of her world once and for all. Rowan stood there, a well-dressed man in a room full of people, and he had never felt more alone in his entire life. He had his freedom. He had his money. But as he watched the woman he loved and the 4 children who were his legacy walk away, he knew with a crushing certainty that he had nothing at all.